You are the master of your fate. Let's begin. I want you to think back, not to the big fights or the dramatic endings, but to the quiet moments that slipped through your fingers without you even noticing. The kind of moments where you sat across from someone you once called your closest ally, and yet something inside you felt distant, like you were speaking through glass, like the words still came out, but the meaning had gone thin, worn down by time and unspoken neglect. You tell yourself it's normal, that this is just what happens when careers thicken, when responsibilities multiply, when life gets loud and you both get tired. But deep down, you know that's not the whole truth, because friendship doesn't die in fire, it starves in silence, and you've been feeding your scraps while calling it a feast. You still like their posts, you still send the birthday messages, you still say we should get together soon with the best of intentions, but when was the last time you asked them a question that made their breath catch, that made their eyes soften with the relief of being truly seen? When was the last time you let them see you, not the polished version, not the I'm fine version, but the raw, uncertain, beautifully human version that only shows up when you feel safe enough to be real? I'm going to show you the 3 silent killers that are rotting your closest bonds from the inside. Not betrayal, not drama, not some catastrophic falling out, but something far more insidious, emotional laziness that convinces you scrolling is enough, invisible comparison that turns their joy into your quiet shame, and the dangerous myth that contact equals connection, that replying haha to a text somehow sustains a soul-deep alliance. And before we're done here, I'll give you the one question, tested by men who built empires and kept lifelong allies through war, failure, and triumph, that can resurrect a dying friendship in under 10 minutes, not through grand gestures or emotional speeches, but through a single courageous act of presence that says, without flinching, I see you, and I'm not looking away. This isn't about guilt, and it's not about going back to how things were. It's about deciding right now that the people who matter most to you deserve more than your leftovers, more than your convenience, more than your autopilot affection. They deserve your attention, your curiosity, your unwavering willingness to show up, even when it's awkward, even when it's messy, even when you don't feel like it, because that's where real friendship lives, not in the highlight reels, but in the quiet, unglamorous spaces between the noise, and I'm going to show you exactly how to rebuild it, one honest question at a time. You've been sold a counterfeit version of closeness and you didn't even realize you were buying it. You wake up, you scroll, you double tap a photo of someone laughing on a beach, you chuckle at a meme they shared, you fire off a quick congrats Ludge when they announce a promotion, and somewhere in the back of your mind you tell yourself, we're still close. As if digital acknowledgement could ever substitute for human presence, as if the rhythm of your thumbs on a screen could replicate the warmth of sitting across from someone in silence, watching the way their eyes shift when they're about to say something true. I've watched men who commanded boardrooms and built factories sit alone in their studies at night, surrounded by notifications, drowning in friends, and yet feel a loneliness so deep it hollowed out their chests, not because no one was there, but because no one was with them. Not in the way that matters, not in the way that nourishes the parts of us that don't perform, that don't produce, that don't posture. You think you're maintaining your friendships, but what you're really doing is maintaining the illusion of them. You're keeping the lights on in an empty house, dusting the furniture, watering the plastic plants, pretending that if you just keep up the routine, no one will notice that the soul has left the room. I remember sitting with a man once, brilliant, wealthy, admired, who showed me his phone, filled with hundreds of messages, dozens of group chats, endless streams of banter and inside jokes, and he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, I have nowhere to go when I'm broken, and that moment stayed with me, because it wasn't a failure of connection, it was a failure of depth, a failure of courage, a failure to trade the easy currency of emojis for the harder, richer currency of vulnerability. You're not losing your friends because you're unlovable or unworthy. You're losing them because you've accepted a thinner version of love than either of you deserve, because you've let convenience masquerade as care, because you've mistaken frequency for fidelity, volume for value. Real friendship doesn't live in the feed, it lives in the friction, in the pauses, in the moments when someone leans forward and says, tell me what that really cost you, and means it. And until you're willing to step out of the stream of shallow interaction and into the current of real presence, you'll keep feeling this ache, this quiet ghosting of the soul, not by others, but by yourself, by your own willingness to settle for less than the truth. This isn't about deleting your apps or shaming your habits. It's about recognizing that what you're doing now isn't working, that liking a post doesn't feed a friendship any more than staring at a menu feeds a hunger. And if you want something real, something lasting, something that holds you when the world shakes, then it's time to stop pretending pixels are people and start showing up like the friend you still remember how to be. There was a time, perhaps not long ago, when you would have noticed the tremor in their voice, the way their smile didn't quite reach their eyes, the slight hesitation before they said, I'm fine. and you would have leaned in not with interrogation, but with quiet insistence, with a kind of gentle pressure that says, I'm here, and I'm not letting you hide from me, not because I need to fix you, but because I refuse to let you disappear on my watch. But somewhere along the way, you got tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the deeper fatigue that comes from living in a world that never stops demanding your attention, your performance, your emotional labor. And so you started taking shortcuts. You started accepting surface answers. You started letting how are you be met with good'll and letting that be enough, because digging deeper felt like work you didn't have the energy for, because staying present felt like a luxury you couldn't afford, because asking the real question meant opening a door you weren't sure you had the strength to walk through with them. That, my friend, is emotional laziness, not malice, not indifference, but the slow, quiet surrender of your curiosity, the erosion of your willingness to bear the beautiful burden of truly seeing another human being. I watched Henry Ford, a man who moved steel and reshaped industry, make time every single week to sit with one person from his inner circle and ask nothing about business, nothing about progress, nothing about results, but only this, what's weighing on you that no one else knows about. He didn't do it to solve their problems. He did it to remind them they weren't alone inside them, and in doing so, he forged bonds that outlasted market crashes, personal failures, and public scandals. You don't need to be a titan of industry to do this. You only need to decide that the people you love are worth more than your comfort, worth more than your fatigue, worth more than the 5 seconds it takes to send a heart emoji. Emotional laziness isn't a character flaw, it's a habit, and like all habits, it can be broken, not with grand declarations, but with small, stubborn acts of courage. The text that says, I heard the weariness in your voice yesterday, want to talk about it? The call that begins with no agenda, just wanted to hear how your heart's doing? The silence you hold when they start to speak, not rushing to fill it, not jumping to advise, just letting them feel, for once, that they are not performing for you, but resting in your presence. Friendship doesn't die in the fire of conflict. It suffocates in the quiet of unasked questions, in the space between how are you and the truth they were ready to tell you if only you had signaled you were ready to hear it. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself, who in your life have you let off the hook, not because they asked you to, but because you were too tired to hold the space? And tomorrow, before you check your notifications, before you reply to anyone else, send one message, just one that dares to go beneath the surface, that says, without apology, I see you, and I'm not satisfied with the version of you that fits in a text bubble. That's where it begins, not with a speech, not with a plan, but with a single question asked with your whole heart and answered perhaps with theirs. You tell yourself you're happy for them, and in many ways you are. You like their announcement post. You leave a congratulatory comment. You even raise a glass when you see them in person. But beneath that polished surface, there's a whisper, quiet but persistent, that curls around your ribs and asks, not with malice, but with mourning, why them? Why not me? And that whisper, that subtle, shame-laced arithmetic you perform in the shadows of your mind, is the second silent killer, the one that doesn't announce itself with jealousy or bitterness, but with a quiet withdrawal, a gentle pulling back, a slow retreat into the safety of distance, because it's easier to fade than to face the discomfort of standing beside someone whose light, for now, shines brighter than your own. This isn't about petty envy, it's about identity erosion, about the way you've been conditioned to measure your worth not by your growth, not by your integrity, not by the quiet victories no one applauds, but by external markers that were never meant to define you, the title, the salary, the relationship status, the vacation photos, the public validation. And when someone you love achieves those things before you, or in ways you haven't yet touched, something inside you flinches, not because you want to take it from them, but because you're afraid their success is proof of your delay. Their momentum, a mirror of your stagnation. I remember sitting across from Andrew Carnegie one rainy Pittsburgh evening, watching me fidget with my notebook as I scrolled through news of a rival's triumph, not with anger, but with that familiar hollow ache. And without a word, he slid a blank page toward me and said, write down everything you admire in what he's done, not to copy him, but to map what's possible for you. I did, reluctantly at first, listing the discipline, the boldness, the resilience, the clarity of vision, and by the time I looked up, the envy had dissolved, not because I no longer cared about my own path, but because I had stopped seeing his success as a verdict on mine and started seeing it as a compass. That's the antidote to invisible comparison, not denial, not forced positivity, but translation, the deliberate act of turning their victory into your vocabulary, their breakthrough into your blueprint, their light into your lantern, not to follow their footsteps, but to illuminate your own. You don't have to diminish them to elevate yourself. In fact, the opposite is true. The more you allow yourself to genuinely celebrate their rise, the more you free yourself from the prison of comparison, because admiration, when practiced with honesty, doesn't shrink you, it expands you. It reminds you that abundance isn't a finite resource, that their win doesn't cancel yours, that the universe isn't keeping score, only you are. So the next time you feel that familiar tug, the one that makes you hesitate before calling, that makes you skim their message instead of savoring it, that makes you edit your own joy so it doesn't overshadow theirs or dim in its glow, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, what part of their journey is trying to teach me something about my own? Then write it down, not as a to-do list, but as a tribute, a quiet honoring of the path they've walked that might, just might, hold a clue for yours. Because true friendship doesn't thrive in competition, it thrives in witness, in the sacred act of standing beside someone as they rise, without needing to rise faster, without needing to rise at all, just being there, fully, proudly, unthreatened, and in doing so, giving yourself permission to do the same, in your own time, in your own way, without apology. That's how you kill the second silent killer, not by silencing the comparison, but by alchemizing it, turning envy into insight, distance into devotion, and their light into fuel, not for rivalry, but for reverence, and ultimately, for your own relentless becoming. You've convinced yourself that friendship should feel effortless, that if it's real, it will survive the seasons of silence, the dry spells of distraction, the long stretches where life swallows you whole and spits you out too tired to do anything but collapse, and so you wait. You wait for the right time, for the moment, when your schedule clears, when your energy returns, when the stars align and you can show up as the friend you wish you were. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. Real friendship doesn't thrive in the absence of effort. It thrives because of it, not the grand sweeping gestures that make for good stories, but the small, stubborn, inconvenient choices that say, you matter more than my comfort, even when, especially when, showing up costs you something. I knew a man once, a titan of industry, who canceled a board meeting not because of an emergency, not because of profit loss, but because a friend of 30 years had lost his wife, and he knew, deep in his bones, that presence was the only currency that mattered in that moment. He didn't go to fix, didn't go to advise, didn't go to fill the silence with platitudes. He went to sit, to pour coffee, to stare out the window beside him, to be a living, breathing reminder that grief doesn't have to be carried alone. And years later, when that same titan faced his own collapse, it was that friend, the one he had shown up for without promise of return, who flew across the country to sit beside him, silent, steadfast, unshakable. That's the power of inconvenient presence. It doesn't just sustain a friendship, it forges it into something unbreakable, something that outlasts market crashes and personal failures and the slow erosion of time. But you've been treating friendship like a vending machine. Insert a text when you're bored, receive a reply, call it connection. You reach out when it's convenient, when you're already scrolling, when you have 5 spare minutes between meetings, when you're feeling nostalgic or lonely or in need of validation, and then you wonder why the bond feels thin, why the laughter feels rehearsed, why the silence between messages grows heavier with every passing month. Convenience is the enemy of depth, not because it's evil, but because it's insufficient. Because real intimacy is built in the moments when you choose to show up despite the inconvenience, despite the fatigue, despite the fear that you won't have the right words because the words aren't what matter. What matters is the willingness to be there, imperfectly, awkwardly, faithfully. You don't need to fly across the country to prove your loyalty, but you do need to send the voice note instead of the text, to make the call even when you're tired, to show up at their door with takeout and no agenda, to say, I don't have solutions, but I have time, and I'm giving it to you even when, especially when, it interrupts your rhythm, even when it costs you something. That's how you break the third silent killer, not by waiting for the perfect moment, but by creating the imperfect one, not by demanding reciprocity, but by offering generosity without ledger, not by hoping they'll meet you halfway, but by walking the whole damn road yourself, if that's what it takes, because the friendships that survive, know that thrive, aren't the ones that were easy to maintain, but the ones you chose to nourish even when you didn't feel like it, even when it wasn't convenient, even when the world told you you had better things to do. So ask yourself tonight, who have you been waiting to reach out to when things calm down? And then ask yourself the harder question, what if calm never comes? What if this is it, the messy, noisy, overloaded, imperfect now, and if you don't show up in it, you'll wake up one day to realize you let something irreplaceable slip through your fingers, not with a bang, but with a whisper, the whisper of later, the whisper of soon, the whisper of when it's easier. Don't let convenience be the tombstone on a friendship that deserves so much more. Show up awkwardly, tiredly, beautifully, and watch what grows in the soil of your sacrifice. You've been waiting for friendship to feel natural again, for the ease, the flow, the effortless rhythm you remember from college dorms or childhood summers, or those rare golden seasons when life aligned and connection came without cost. But that's where you've been misled. Friendship was never meant to be passive, never meant to be sustained by nostalgia or chemistry alone, never meant to float on the current of convenience. It was always meant to be built deliberately, daily, with the same intention you give to your career, your health, your craft. Because the truth is, No bond survives on goodwill alone, no matter how deep the history or how bright the beginning. What you're longing for isn't a return to how things were, it's an evolution into what they could become, if you stopped waiting for the feeling to return and started making the choices that summon it. Not once, not when inspiration strikes, but relentlessly, rhythmically, even when, especially when you don't feel like it. I've watched men who commanded armies and reshaped economies fail miserably in their closest relationships, not because they lacked love, but because they assumed love was enough. They didn't understand that love is the seed, but attention is the water, initiation is the sunlight, ritual is the soil, and without all three, even the strongest seed withers. So let me be plain. Friendship is not a mood, it's a practice. It is not sustained by shared memories, it is forged by shared presence. It does not bloom because you once laughed until you cried. It endures because you choose again and again to show up even when you have nothing to laugh about. And that practice rests on three non-negotiable pillars. The first is intentional attention, which means you stop letting your eyes glaze over when they speak. You stop rehearsing your reply while they're still forming their thought. You stop reducing their life to bullet points you can skim. Instead, you train yourself to notice the shift in their tone when they're avoiding pain, the way their hands move when they're excited, the silence that lingers a beat too long after they say, "I'm fine," because attention is the first act of love, and without it, everything else is performance. The second pillar is vulnerable initiation, which means you stop waiting for them to reach out first. Stop hiding behind "they never call me either." Stop letting pride or fear or fatigue dictate who carries the weight of connection. You become the one who sends the message that says, "I miss you." The one who asks the question that risks awkwardness. The one who says, "I need to hear your voice," even when your ego whispers, "Why should I always be the one to try?" Because initiation is not weakness, it is leadership. And the strongest friendships are led by those brave enough to go first. And the third pillar, the one that transforms sporadic effort into enduring strength, is ritualized reciprocity, which means you stop leaving connection to chance, stop hoping we'll run into each other soon, stop trusting spontaneity to do the work of structure. Instead, you build rhythms. The Sunday voice note, the monthly coffee walk, the quarterly no-agenda dinner, the annual handwritten letter, not because rituals are rigid, but because they are rails, guiding you back to each other when life tries to pull you apart, giving you a structure to lean on when your motivation falters. You wouldn't expect your body to stay strong without exercise, your mind to stay sharp without study, your finances to grow without strategy. Why then do you expect your soul's most sacred alliances to thrive without design? Friendship is not a relic to be preserved. It is a living thing to be cultivated, watered, pruned, protected. And if you want it to survive the droughts, the storms, the long winters of distraction and fatigue, then you must stop treating it like a luxury and start treating it like the lifeline it is. Not because you're obligated, but because you've decided, once and for all, that the people who see you, who hold you, who walk beside you through fire, they are worth the work, worth the inconvenience, worth the daily deliberate choice to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's messy, even when you don't feel like it, because that's where real friendship lives, not in the memory of what was, but in the relentless, courageous commitment to what still can be. You think of Henry Ford as a man of steel and assembly lines, of engines and efficiency, of factories that reshaped the modern world, and you're not wrong. But what you don't know, what history rarely mentions, is that the same man who revolutionized industry also revolutionized the way he nurtured his closest relationships, not with grand dinners or public displays of loyalty, but with a quiet, fiercely protected ritual, one he maintained for over 40 years, even at the height of his empire, even when the world demanded every waking hour of his life. Every quarter, without fail, he gathered 5 men, not his executives, not his investors, but his true confidants, the ones who knew him before the fame, who had seen him fail, who had argued with him, challenged him, sat with him in silence after losses no headline would ever mention, and for 3 hours, in a room with no agenda, no assistants, no interruptions, he asked them one question and one question only. What's costing you your peace right now? No advice was allowed, no solutions, no judgments, no you should have or why didn't you, just listening, deep, patient, unwavering listening, the kind that doesn't seek to fix, but to witness, to hold space for the weight they carried without demanding they put it down. And then, when each man had spoken, or chosen not to, Ford would do the same, laying bare his own struggles, not as a leader, but as a man, vulnerable, uncertain, still learning, still stumbling, and in that exchange, something sacred was forged. Not alliance for profit, not loyalty for position, but trust that ran deeper than reputation, deeper than success, deeper than time. I was there for one of those dinners, not as a participant, but as an observer, seated quietly in the corner with my notebook, watching how the air in the room changed the moment the door closed, how shoulders dropped, how voices softened, how eyes met without calculation. And I realized then that Ford's genius wasn't just in manufacturing, it was in maintenance, in understanding that the strongest empires, the most enduring legacies, are not built on solitary brilliance, but on the quiet, consistent tending of human bonds that hold you steady when the world shakes. He didn't call it networking, he called it keeping the roots alive. And he knew, as you must learn, that roots don't grow in boardrooms or group chats or holiday cards. They grow in soil that is watered deliberately, in darkness, in stillness, in the unglamorous, unphotographed moments where one human being says to another, without flinching, I am here. I am not in a hurry. Tell me what hurts, and I will not look away. You don't need a boardroom or a fortune to replicate this. You need only three things: a small circle of people you trust enough to be real with, a protected time you refuse to cancel even when, especially when, life gets loud, and the courage to ask the question that cuts through the noise. What's costing you your peace right now? And then, the even greater courage to listen without fixing, without comparing, without retreating into your own story. Start small. One person, 1 hour, one question, no phones, no distractions, no performance, just presence. And if they don't answer right away, wait. Silence is not failure, it's often the prelude to truth. This is not about creating another obligation, it's about reclaiming a rhythm that modern life has stolen from you, a rhythm that says you are not alone in your becoming, a rhythm that turns friendship from a passive noun into an active verb, to tend, to witness, to hold, to return to, again and again. Ford didn't keep his empire alive by working harder, he kept it alive by refusing to let the men who mattered most to him become strangers in the shadow of his success. And if you want your closest bonds to survive, no, to thrive in the chaos of your own life, then you must do the same. Stop leaving connection to chance and start building it into your calendar like the non-negotiable, soul-sustaining ritual it is, because the people who walk with you through fire deserve more than your leftovers. They deserve your presence, your attention, your unwavering commitment to see them, truly see them, even when the world is screaming for you to look away. There is a question simple in its wording, seismic in its effect, that I have watched resurrect friendships buried under years of silence, heal bonds fractured by misunderstanding, and rekindle connections that had grown cold from neglect, not because it's clever or manipulative or psychologically engineered, but because it does something rare and radical in our age of performance. It invites the truth without demanding it. It creates space without pressure. It signals with quiet authority, I'm not here to judge you, fix you, or perform for you. I'm here to see you as you are right now, even if what you are is tired, confused, broken, or uncertain. And that question, the one Ford used, the one Carnegie whispered to his closest allies, the one I've taught to men and women who went on to rebuild marriages, salvage partnerships, and revive friendships they thought were lost, is this. What's something you've been feeling lately that no one knows? Not how are you? Which invites the reflexive good, not what's new, which triggers the highlight reel, not you okay, which can be deflected with a shrug, but this. A question that bypasses the armor, that sidesteps the resume of your life, that goes straight to the undercurrent, the hidden weight, the unspoken ache, the quiet joy no one has witnessed, and gives them permission, for the first time in a long time, to name it, to release it, to let it breathe in the open air without fear of correction or comparison or collapse. I've seen hardened executives choke up at the sound of it. I've watched estranged friends sit in stunned silence for 30 seconds before whispering an answer that cracked open a door they thought was sealed forever. I've received letters from men who asked this question of their fathers, their sons, their oldest friends, and received in return not just words, but tears, apologies, confessions, laughter, the kind of raw, unfiltered humanity that only emerges when someone feels truly safe to be seen. The power of this question doesn't lie in its phrasing, it lies in the intention behind it, in the stillness you bring when you ask it, in the way you lean in, not to solve, not to relate, not to jump in with your own story, but simply to hold the space, to let the silence stretch if it needs to signal with your eyes, your posture, your breath, that you are not in a hurry, that there is no wrong answer, that whatever they say or don't say will not change your regard for them. And when they speak, if they speak, you do not offer advice unless asked. You do not say, I know how you feel. You do not pivot to your own experience. You say only this, thank you for telling me, I'm here. That's it. No fixing, no analyzing, no silver linings, just acknowledgement, just presence, just the quiet, unwavering affirmation that their truth, however messy, however small, however strange, was worth the risk of speaking it. This is not a trick. This is not a tactic. This is an act of courage, yours to ask it and theirs to answer it, and in that shared courage, something ancient and essential is restored. The understanding that we were never meant to carry our inner worlds alone, that friendship is not a transaction of updates and emojis, but a sanctuary for the parts of us that don't perform, that don't produce, that simply are. So tonight, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but tonight, pick one person, one friend whose light has dimmed in your life, not from anger, but from distance, and send them this, nothing more, nothing less. No need to reply right away, but I've been thinking of you. What's something you've been feeling lately that no one knows? Then close your phone, walk away, let the question do its work. And when, if they reply, don't rush, don't perform, just say thank you for telling me, I'm here. You will not believe what grows from that single seed, not because you're clever, but because you were brave enough to ask the question that no one else dared to, the question that doesn't seek to change them, but to honor them exactly as they are. You don't need a weekend retreat, a grand apology, or a 3-hour heart-to-heart to begin repairing what's been neglected. You need only 24 hours and the willingness to take one deliberate, vulnerable step that cuts through the noise, the guilt, the overthinking, and the endless "I'll do it later" that has kept you stuck in the purgatory of good intentions. This is not about fixing everything at once. It's about breaking the spell of silence, about proving to yourself and to them that the bond still matters enough to risk awkwardness, enough to initiate without guarantee, enough to reach across the distance you've both allowed to grow. So here is your assignment, clear and uncompromising. Within the next 24 hours, you will send one message, just one, to one person you feel has drifted from your life. Not because of betrayal or anger, but because of time, distraction, emotional laziness, or the slow creep of convenience. It doesn't have to be someone you haven't spoken to in years. It can be someone you texted last week but haven't truly seen in months. Pick the one whose absence leaves a quiet ache, the one you think of in the shower or in traffic or right before sleep, the one you've been meaning to call soon, and send them this, word for word, no edits, no softening, no adding ha-ha or emojis to dilute the weight of it. No need to reply right away, but I've been thinking of you. What's something you've been feeling lately that no one knows? Then, and this is non-negotiable, you will close your phone. You will not hover. You will not refresh. You will not draft follow-up messages in your head. You will let the question breathe, let it settle, let it do its work in their heart without your interference. If they reply, whether in 5 minutes or 5 days, you will respond with only this. Thank you for telling me. I'm here. No advice, no me too, no shifting the focus to your own life, just acknowledgement, just presence, just the quiet, unwavering signal that their truth was worth the risk of speaking it. And if they don't reply, you will wait 72 hours no less and then send one follow-up, gentle but firm. No pressure at all. Just wanted you to know I'm holding space for you whenever you're ready, or even if you're not. And then you let it go. Not as defeat, but as dignity, because your courage is not measured by their response, but by your willingness to reach without guarantee, to offer without demand, to show up even when the outcome is uncertain. This is not a test of their loyalty, it's a declaration of yours. It's you saying, without fanfare, without expectation, you still matter to me. And I'm not waiting for the perfect moment to prove it, I'm creating it, right now, imperfectly, bravely, faithfully. I've watched men and women send this message trembling, convinced they'd be met with silence or indifference, only to receive replies that cracked open doors they thought were sealed forever, confessions that led to reconciliation, laughter that reignited old rhythms, tears that washed away years of distance. But even when the reply never came, even when the silence stretched on, something shifted inside them. The sender, because they stopped being a passive mourner of what was lost and became an active architect of what could still be. So set your timer, look at your contacts, pick the name that makes your chest tighten just a little, that's the one, and send the message. Not tomorrow, not after you've rehearsed it, not when you feel ready, now, today. Before the sun sets on this day, let your courage speak louder than your fear, because friendship doesn't die in fire, it dies in silence. And you're about to break the silence, one honest question at a time. You sent the message, the one that asked the real question, the one that risked awkwardness, the one that laid your sincerity bare without armor or a deflection. And now, hours have passed, then a day, then 2, and still nothing. No reply, no read receipt, no typing bubble flickering to life. And in that silence, your mind begins its quiet unraveling. You wonder if you overstepped, if you misjudged the bond, if they saw your vulnerability as neediness, your courage as intrusion, your care as obligation. You start to question whether you should have waited, softened the words, added a joke to cushion the weight. But stop, breathe, and listen closely, because this silence, however heavy it feels, is not the end of the story. It is not rejection. It is not failure. It is not proof that you were wrong to reach out. It is instead something far more profound, an invitation not from them, but from life itself, to deepen your own integrity, to anchor your worth in something sturdier than reciprocity, to prove to yourself that your courage does not require validation to be valid. I knew a man, quiet, unassuming, the kind the world overlooks, who sent that same question to a childhood friend he hadn't spoken to in 11 years, not out of desperation, but out of quiet conviction that some bonds deserve a second chance, even if only one person is willing to extend it. He received no reply, not after a week, not after a month, not after 6, and yet every 3 months, without fanfare, without expectation, he sent a variation of the same message. No need to reply, just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. I'm here if you ever want to talk. He didn't do it to guilt, to manipulate, to force a door open. He did it because he had made a decision deep in his bones that this friendship, or at least the essence of what it once was, still mattered enough to honor, even if it was never reciprocated. And then on a rainy Tuesday in the 11th month, a reply came, 3 words, "Can we talk?" followed by a 4-hour phone call that unraveled years of silence, grief, regret, and ultimately forgiveness. But here's what matters more than the reply. Even if it had never come, that man would have still been the kind of person who reaches faithfully, patiently, without ledger, because he understood something you must learn now. Your value as a friend is not determined by who answers you, but by your willingness to ask, to show up, to extend the hand even when you're not sure it will be taken. Silence is not always a no. Sometimes it's a not yet. Sometimes it's a I'm not ready. Sometimes it's a I don't know how to say what I feel. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's a test, not of them, but of you. Can you love without condition? Can you offer without demand? Can you stand in your truth even when it echoes back to you alone? That's where real character is forged, not in the applause of reciprocity, but in the quiet dignity of unwavering intention. So if they don't respond, not today, not next week, not ever, you do not retract your care, you do not apologize for your courage, you do not shrink back into the safety of silence. You simply say to yourself with quiet authority, I meant what I said, and I mean it still. And then you live accordingly, not waiting, not hovering, not resenting, but continuing to build the kind of life, the kind of presence, the kind of soul-deep integrity that makes you the kind of friend people eventually, when they're ready, fight their way back to. Because the world is full of people who reply quickly and mean nothing, but it is starved for people like you who reach slowly, sincerely, steadfastly, who understand that real friendship is not a transaction, but a testament to the kind of person you choose to be, regardless of who chooses to stay. You cannot and should not try to resurrect every friendship that has faded, not because some people aren't worth the effort, but because your energy, your attention, your emotional capacity, these are not infinite resources to be scattered like seeds on barren soil, but sacred currencies to be invested with ruthless compassion, with clear-eyed discernment, with the understanding that to honor some bonds, you must release others, not with bitterness, not with blame, but with the quiet grace of someone who has learned that loyalty is not measured by duration, but by alignment. So before you pour your heart into rekindling what's cold, before you exhaust yourself trying to breathe life into connections that have long ceased to nourish you, you must sit down, alone, undistracted, unflinching, and conduct a friendship audit, not as a judge, but as a steward of your own soul's well-being, asking not who do I miss, but who merits my presence now, because friendship at its highest form is not about nostalgia, not about obligation, not about who knew you back when, but about who sees you now, who challenges you now, who walks beside you in the direction you are becoming, not the direction you've outgrown. Begin with this. Make 3 columns on a single sheet of paper. No digital notes, no apps, no distractions, just you, your hand, and the truth. In the first column, list the names, no more than 10, of those who energize you, who leave you feeling lighter, clearer, more alive after you've spoken with them, who reflect back your best self, not by flattery, but by honest witness, who ask the questions that stir your soul, not just your schedule. In the second column, list those who exhaust you, not because they're evil, not because they've wronged you, but because every interaction leaves you feeling drained, diminished, performative, because you find yourself editing your truth, swallowing your joy, or carrying their weight long after the conversation ends. And in the third column, the most important, List those who mirror you, not by agreeing with you, but by challenging you, not by comforting you into complacency, but by calling you higher, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it stings. The ones who see your blind spots and love you enough to name them, who celebrate your rise without envy, who hold space for your fall without fixing, who are not just companions, but catalysts. Now look at your lists, really look, and ask yourself, who have I been pouring into? Who pours nothing back but fatigue? Who have I been avoiding? Who actually deserves my courage? Who have I been clinging to out of guilt, not gratitude? This is not about discarding people, it's about redirecting your devotion. Some friendships were meant for seasons. Honor them, thank them, release them, not with drama, not with confrontation, but with quiet closure, a gentle letting go that says, you mattered then, I release you now. And some, the ones in column 1, the ones in column 3, they are your inner circle, your sanctuary, your soul's chosen family, and to them, you must now give your fiercest loyalty, your most intentional presence, your unwavering commitment to show up, not when it's easy, but when it's necessary. I watched Carnegie do this in his 50s, quietly, gracefully, without announcement, stepping back from dozens of allies who had become emotional vampires and doubling down on the 5 men who still made him feel like a student, not a statue. And it was that pruning, that ruthless tending of his inner garden that gave him the energy to build his greatest works in the second half of his life. You are not failing your old friends by choosing your true ones. You are honoring the evolution of your soul. So take the hour, do the audit, let the names speak to you, and then without apology, without guilt, begin to shift your energy, your time, your courageous presence toward those who reflect not who you were, but who you are becoming. Because the quality of your life, your peace, your growth, your resilience will always be determined not by the number of people who know your name, but by the depth of the few who know your soul and choose every day to walk beside it. You've identified who matters, not by history, not by habit, but by the quiet truth of how they make you feel when you're fully yourself. And now, the most critical step begins. Not grand gestures, not emotional overhauls, not promises to be better, but the quiet, relentless construction of rhythm, the kind of steady, unglamorous cadence that turns intention into infrastructure, that weaves your most sacred connections into the fabric of your actual life so they no longer depend on mood, convenience, or the fleeting spark of inspiration. You've waited too long for someday when you're less busy, someday when you feel more energized, someday when the timing is perfect, but someday is a myth sold to the weary, and you are no longer willing to be its customer. What you need now is not motivation, it's mechanism, not a feeling, it's a framework. A simple, sustainable, non-negotiable rhythm that ensures the people who nourish your soul are not left to the mercy of your fluctuating willpower or the chaos of your calendar. So here is your blueprint, not rigid, not burdensome, but alive, adaptable, anchored in the reality of your life as it is, not as you wish it were. First, commit to one weekly micro check-in, not a text, not an emoji, not a how's it going, but a voice note, no longer than 90 seconds, sent to one person from your inner circle, saying nothing more than this, just wanted you to hear my voice. No need to reply, but if something's weighing on you, I'm here to listen, always. The voice note is non-negotiable because tone, pause, breath, these carry the soul of your presence in a way text never can. Second, establish one monthly depth touch point. Block 30 minutes, same day each month, and ask one person, rotate through your inner circle, the Ford question, what's costing you your peace right now? And then for the full 30 minutes, do nothing but listen. No advice, no relating, no fixing, just presence. Record it in your calendar like a medical appointment, because it is. Third, design one quarterly inconvenient act of presence. This is where you break the tyranny of convenience. Show up in person, even if it's awkward, even if it's messy, even if you have to rearrange your schedule. Bring coffee, take a walk, sit in silence if needed, but be there, physically, undistracted, phone away, agenda-free for at least 60 minutes. Not to celebrate, not to solve, just to be. These are not obligations, they are lifelines. They are the rails that keep you on track when life tries to derail you. They are the quiet rebellion against a world that wants you scattered, distracted, and relationally malnourished. And if you miss a week, don't collapse into guilt, just begin again. If a month slips by, reset without self-flagellation. The rhythm is not about perfection, it's about return. It's about proving, again and again, that the people who hold your soul are worth the structure, worth the inconvenience, worth the deliberate carving of space in a world that gives you none. I've watched men who move markets and shape nations fail at this, not because they didn't care, but because they assumed love was enough. And I've watched quiet, uncelebrated souls build friendships that outlasted empires, not because they were gifted, but because they were ruthlessly consistent. You don't need more time, you don't need more energy. You need only the courage to protect what matters, to say no to the trivial so you can say yes to the essential. to build your inner circle rhythm, not when life calms down, but inside the storm, because that's where real friendship is forged, not in the absence of chaos, but in the deliberate daily choice to create pockets of peace within it. So tonight, before you sleep, open your calendar, block the first weekly micro check-in, schedule the first monthly depth touch point, plan the first quarterly inconvenient act, and then without fanfare, without waiting for inspiration, begin. Not someday, not when you're ready, now, because the friendships that will carry you through the next decade are not built in grand declarations, they're built in these small, stubborn, sacred rhythms, and you're about to become the architect of your own belonging. You've been approaching friendship as if its highest purpose is comfort, a harbor, a refuge, a place to rest your weary soul. And while that is true in part, you've missed its deeper, more demanding function. Friendship, at its most transformative, is not merely a sanctuary. It is a crucible, not just a place to be held, but a mirror that refuses to let you look away from the parts of yourself you've learned to ignore, avoid, or apologize for. The people who choose to stay, not the ones who flatter you, not the ones who agree with you, not the ones who only celebrate your victories, but the ones who sit with you in your confusion, who name your blind spots without malice, who challenge your stories when they've grown too small, who love you enough to risk your discomfort. Those are not just friends. They are your most essential teachers, your quiet guides, your living curriculum in the art of becoming fully, unapologetically, courageously yourself. I remember sitting across from Edison, not in his lab, not amid sparks and schematics, but in his kitchen at midnight, coffee gone cold, after a failure that had shaken his confidence. And it wasn't another inventor or investor who pulled him back from the edge, but an old friend, a man with no technical mind at all, who simply said, "You keep talking about the machine, but what's it costing the man?" And in that question, Edison didn't find an answer, he found a reckoning. That's the gift of true friendship. It doesn't hand you solutions, it hands you awareness. It doesn't smooth your path, it illuminates your patterns. It doesn't cheerlead your ego, it confronts your evasions, gently, relentlessly, faithfully. And if your friendships feel shallow, if they leave you feeling entertained but unchanged, liked but not seen, celebrated but not challenged, then ask yourself honestly, are you showing up as a student, open, curious, willing to be unsettled, or as a consumer seeking validation, comfort, distraction? Are you surrounding yourself with people who reflect your current self or who reflect the self you're becoming? Because growth is not a solo act, it is a dialogue, a dance, a call and response between your soul and the souls brave enough to speak truth into it, even when, especially when, that truth is inconvenient. The friend who notices when you're shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations, that's your teacher. The one who asks, is this decision aligned with your peace or your fear? That's your teacher. The one who sits with you in silence after you've spoken a hard truth, not rushing to fill the space, not offering a fix, just letting you feel the weight of your own honesty, that's your teacher. These are not relationships to be managed, they are relationships to be studied, to be honored, to be protected with the same ferocity you give to your dreams, because they are, in truth, the scaffolding upon which those dreams are built. So stop asking, do they make me feel good? And start asking, do they make me feel real? Stop seeking friendships that reflect your highlight reel and start cultivating the ones that hold up a mirror to your whole, messy, magnificent humanity, the parts you're proud of and the parts you're still learning to love. Because the deepest friendships are not built on shared interests or mutual admiration. They are built on shared evolution, on the quiet, daily agreement to walk beside each other not as finished products, but as works in progress, flawed, growing, stumbling, rising, and choosing, again and again, to say, I see you, I'm still here, let's keep becoming together. That's where the real magic lives, not in the absence of friction, but in the presence of fearless witness, and if you're willing to embrace it, your friendships won't just comfort you, they'll transform you. I'm not asking you to fill your calendar with more calls, your inbox with more messages, your life with more names. I'm asking you to go deeper with fewer, to trade the illusion of connection for the substance of presence, to stop measuring your worth by how many people know your story and start measuring it by how many people truly see you, not the version you post, not the version you perform, not the version you polish for public consumption, but the one that wakes up tired, that doubts in silence, that dreams in secret, that stumbles, that rises, that dares to hope even when the world whispers be realistic. You've been spreading yourself thin, trying to keep every door open, every thread intact, every relationship alive, not because they all nourish you, but because you're afraid of what it means to let some go, afraid of being seen as disloyal, as cold, as changed. But I'm here to tell you, letting go is not betrayal, it is stewardship. Choosing depth over breadth is not selfish, it is sacred. And the people who truly belong in your inner circle, they will not flinch when you begin to protect your energy, when you start asking harder questions, when you show up not just to celebrate, but to witness, not just to comfort, but to challenge, because they too are tired of the surface. They too are hungry for truth. They too have been waiting quietly, patiently for someone brave enough to say, let's stop pretending, let's get real. So don't apologize for pruning. Don't apologize for choosing. Don't apologize for building rituals that honor your soul's need for depth, for stillness, for real presence. The friendships that survive this season, that thrive in it, will not be the ones that were easiest to maintain, but the ones you chose to nourish even when it cost you something, even when it was inconvenient, even when you didn't feel like it, because that's where love becomes loyalty, where loyalty becomes legacy, where legacy becomes the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you are not alone in your becoming. You don't need more friends, you never did. You need truer ones, fewer, deeper, fiercer, the kind who will sit with you in the dark without rushing for the light, the kind who will name your greatness even when you can't see it, the kind who will ask again and again what's costing you your peace, and then hold the space for you to answer without judgment, without fixing, without turning away. That's your real wealth. That's your legacy. That's the foundation everything else, your work, your dreams, your peace, will be built upon. So go. Begin, not with a grand gesture, not with a sweeping declaration, but with one text, one question, one act of courage, one ritual, faithfully kept, one mirror, bravely faced, one friendship, deliberately, tenderly, stubbornly resurrected, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. And when you do, when you choose depth over distraction, presence over performance, truth over tidiness, you won't just save your friendships, you'll save yourself. Key takeaways and action steps. Let's be clear, this isn't the end. It's the beginning. The work doesn't conclude when this video does. It crystallizes. Everything you've heard, every story, every principle, every quiet truth laid bare, it all converges here into a set of anchors, a practical framework, a living toolkit you can return to again and again, not when you feel inspired, but when you feel lost, when you feel distant, when you feel that familiar ache of connection gone thin. Because real transformation isn't measured in epiphanies, but in repetitions, in the daily, deliberate choices that turn insight into infrastructure, that turn intention into ritual, that turn I want to be a better friend into I am showing up today as one. So here's what you must carry with you, not as a checklist to complete, but as a compass to consult, whenever the noise of life tries to drown out the quiet voice that says, these people matter, this bond matters, you matter. Summary of core principles. 1. Connection, contact. Liking a post, sending a meme, replying haha, these are gestures, not nourishment. Depth requires intention, presence, and the courage to go beneath the surface. If you're not asking questions that make them pause, you're not building friendship, you're maintaining an illusion. 2. Emotional laziness kills faster than conflict. It's not the fights that end friendships, it's the slow surrender of curiosity, the decision to accept I'm fine as truth, the retreat into convenience when what's needed is courage. You don't have to fix them, you only have to see them. 3. Invisible comparison is the silent divorce. You don't lose friends to envy, you lose them to the quiet arithmetic of why them, why not me, and the withdrawal that follows. Break the cycle by translating their success into your vocabulary, not to copy, but to expand your sense of what's possible. 4. Ritual spontaneity. Always waiting for the right time is how bonds die. Real friendship is built on rhythms. Small, consistent, protected acts of presence that say, you are not an afterthought. Structure is not rigidity, it's love made visible in your calendar. 5. The forward question is your scalpel. Use it wisely. What's something you've been feeling lately that no one knows? This is not a conversation starter, it's a soul opener. Ask it with stillness. Receive the answer with silence. Respond only with, thank you for telling me. I'm here. Immediate assignment. Start today. Today, the 24-hour resuscitation text. Pick one person you've drifted from, not out of anger but neglect. Send them this, word for word. No need to reply right away, but I've been thinking of you. What's something you've been feeling lately that no one knows? Then, close your phone, walk away, let it breathe. If they reply, say only thank you for telling me. I'm here. If they don't, wait 72 hours, then send. No pressure, just wanted you to know I'm holding space for you whenever you're ready, or even if you're not. This is not about their response, it's about your courage. This week, your first micro check-in. Send one voice note, not a text, to someone in your inner circle, no longer than 90 seconds. Say only, just wanted you to hear my voice. No need to reply, but if something's weighing on you, I'm here to listen, always. The voice matters. Tone, pause, breath, these carry your presence in a way words on a screen never can. This moth, conduct your friendship audit. Take one sheet of paper, 3 columns. Column 1, who energizes you, leaves you lighter, clearer, more alive. Column 2, who exhausts you, leaves you drained, performative, diminished. Column 3, who mirrors you, challenges you, calls you higher, sees your blind spots with love. Then, begin to shift your energy. Honor the seasonal friendships with gratitude and release them. Double down on the ones who reflect who you're becoming. Inner script. For when you hesitate, keep this close. In your notes, on your mirror, whispered before you hit send. I don't need their reply to be worthy. I need my courage to be free. Say it when you're afraid they'll think you're needy. Say it when you're tempted to edit your message into something safer. Say it when silence stretches and your mind starts spinning stories of rejection. This is not affirmation. It's armor. It reminds you that your value as a friend is not determined by who answers, but by your willingness to ask, to show up, to extend the hand, even when you're not sure it will be taken. You now hold everything you need, not to fix every friendship, but to begin resurrecting the ones that still beat beneath the surface, the ones worth fighting for, the ones that will hold you when the world shakes. This is not about going back, it's about going deeper. Not about quantity, but quality. Not about nostalgia, but evolution. So don't wait, don't rehearse, don't perfect it. Begin awkwardly, imperfectly, faithfully, today. Because the people who walk with you through fire, they're not just friends, they're your legacy. And it's time to tend to them like the sacred ground they are. Remember, your success begins the moment you decide to act.